January 20th marks Obama's first year. How has this president done? No doubt he came to power at the worst of times, with our nation facing crises on many fronts, including 2 ongoing wars. But Obama acted quickly to meet these crises with one of the most ambitious legislative agendas since Franklin Delano Roosevelt. He moved quickly to enact a stimulus package, though, of course, that got larded up with pork when it passed through Congress. He moved quickly to stabilize the banks, but as the record bonuses paid this year prove, the law that Congress passed, in fact, forced the banks to change nothing at all. He has launched an effort to establish a consumer financial protection agency to make the financial system safer for Americans and for the American economy. But Congress has now exempted a gaggle of special interests, including, most amazingly, used car dealers. After all, who ever had a credit problem with a used car dealer? And Obama has pushed the biggest change in healthcare legislation in a generation, legislation which may indeed pass, but only after extraordinary gifts to pharma, the promise to pay retail prices for wholesale drugs, and to the insurance industry, the promise not to increase competition in that insanely inefficient industry. And finally, the Obama administration has tried mightily to get Congress to address global warming, yet even the very watered-down reform passed by the House now languishes in the Senate. On every front, Obama has tried to enact the substantive changes that he promised, but on every front, he has been stymied. Why? Well, some say the problem is the Republicans, that they've become too extreme, that they're unwilling to compromise, that they're abusing the privileges of the filibuster, that they care only about partisan gain and not about America. That view, in my view, is hopelessly naive. Republicans, of course, have different views about what's good for America, but the problem of America is not the problem of different views. And it's not the problem of just one party. After all, the Democrats have a supermajority in Congress. Nothing gets done or nothing gets not done without them as well. The problem isn't Republicans. The problem isn't Democrats. The problem is what both parties have allowed Congress to become. Our Congress has become the fundraising Congress. Members are obsessed with raising the money they or their party needs to get reelected. They openly and routinely and grotesquely take piles of money from the interests they regulate, producing a Congress that seems not to care a squat about what makes sense. Instead, only what raises campaign dollars. They live in a bubble, in an economy of influence that listens to their funders, that turns government over to their funders, that betrays the simple trust of a democracy, that they be dependent not upon the funders, but upon the people. This is the institution our framers were most proud about creating. But more than any institution that our framers created, this institution has lost the people's trust. It is broken, bankrupt, not fiscally bankrupt, but politically bankrupt. For never in the history of Congress has faith in it or its work been as low. Indeed, more people likely supported the British crown at the time of the Revolution than support this Congress today. So when you think back to 1 year ago, when you remember the feeling that something important had happened, that we had elected, as that young candidate put it, a transformational president, that America had come together in a way that we hadn't in more than a generation, remember, too, what candidate Obama said about this bankrupt institution. If we do not change our politics, if we do not fundamentally change the way Washington works, then the problems we've been talking about for the last generations will be the same ones that haunt us for generations to come. For far too long, through both Democratic and Republican administrations, Washington has allowed lobbyists and campaign contributions to rig the system, no matter what it costs ordinary Americans. If we're not willing to take up that fight to change the way Washington works, then real change, change that will make a lasting difference in the lives of ordinary Americans, will keep getting blocked by the defenders of the status quo. Now, here's how you can take up that fight. First, connect the dots. You need to see that the failures of Washington are linked, that we don't get health care or global warming legislation or real regulation of the financial services sector. Indeed, for Republicans, 20 years of Republican presidents don't produce smaller government or simpler tax systems, all for the very same reason, because Congress is focused not on what the people want, but on what the funders demand. Second, nothing in this is going to change until we change this Congress. Whether you believe in healthcare legislation, global warming, financial reform, food safety, or smaller government, simpler taxes, or less regulation, it doesn't matter. We won't get the ideals pushed by either side of the political spectrum until we change this about our fundamental constitutional system. Third, to change this, we need an idea first proposed by a Republican, Teddy Roosevelt, just over 100 years ago: citizen-funded elections. A voluntary opt-in system where candidates get the funds they need to run their election either from citizens directly in $100 contributions or less, or from citizens indirectly in a grub stake given to them by the Treasury of the United States when they've established that they are a credible and viable candidate. Only a system like this could break the link between money and results in the minds of most Americans. Only a system like this could restore the trust of Americans in this fundamental institution of democracy. Trust that money is not buying results. So, join us in this. Go to our website, change-congress.org, and use our tools to demand that your representatives in both the House and the Senate support citizen-funded elections. And if they don't, then throw them out. Because we won't get our democracy back until they stop selling it. Go to change-congress.org and take up that fight. Do it today.